Hey guys, today we're stepping into a quiet lobby on a rainy Tuesday where a retired Marine and his dog are about to be told they don't belong. It's not the first time, but today it's different. The fluorescent lights buzz low. The front desk is empty, except for a clipboard and a plastic smile waiting to crack. There's a folded letter in his jacket pocket, typed signed legal. But that won't be enough. Not here. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a message. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. He walks in with a slow but steady gait, boots damp from the parking lot, jeans faded at the knees. The kind of man who measures his steps not from injury but from habit. Discipline doesn't retire just because you do. At his side trots Rocco, a black Labrador with alert ears and a calmness that fills the space like incense. No barking, no pulling, just presence. This is the second time James Mitchell has tried moving since his wife passed. The last place was too noisy thin walls and thinner neighbors. He thought this apartment complex a little north of town would offer a fresh start. Trees a walking path, a promise of peace. But as he steps into the leasing office, the receptionist's eyes flick briefly to the dog, then dart away like a reflex. "Hi, can I help you?" she asks, polite enough, but already hedging. James sets down a small folder on the counter. "Got my papers here. Approved lease and the service dog certification. We're ready for the keys." She doesn't reach for the folder. "Oh. Well, we actually have a no-pets policy. I think that should have been in the ad." "It was," he says calmly. "And it also said, service animals are allowed. Federal law. Silence." Then a smile that's more armor than warmth. "Let me get the manager." Rocco sits beside him without being told, eyes fixed on a spot near the door. James doesn't pet him, doesn't need to. Their connection runs deeper than that. Afghanistan, 2011, wasn't a place where you talked much. But a dog that knows when you're slipping into memory and pulls you back to the now, that's not a pet. That's a lifeline. A minute later, the property manager appears. Mid-40s, corporate casual clipboard already, tucked under his arm like a shield. He greets James by name, shakes his hand, and then does the exact same thing, glances at Rocco, and stiffens. "Mr. Mitchell, I understand you've brought a service dog," he begins. James nods, offering the paperwork again. "Well," the man says, glancing at it without taking it, "we do have concerns about animal-related disturbances. Some tenants have allergies. Some are afraid of dogs. We just try to be sensitive, you understand." James tilts his head slightly, trying to keep his voice even. "I served with people who had every kind of fear. You know what helped them get through it? Structure, clarity, respect, not excuses." The manager holds his smile, but it flickers. "I'm not trying to offend you, sir. We just have a policy, and I have federal protection." James replies, setting the certification form flat on the desk. "Americans with Disabilities Act." You've read it, I'm sure. It lands with a dull thud, more legal than loud. But it doesn't change the posture behind the desk. The man doesn't even glance at Rocco's vest, which clearly reads service dog. Do not pet. Instead, he steps back and nods at the receptionist. "We'll need to review this before you can proceed." James doesn't move. "You already reviewed it last week." "I was told everything was approved. You sent a welcome email." The manager exhales slowly, almost like he's the one under pressure. There's been a reassessment. Of what? Of compatibility. Some of our long-term residents are particular. Right, James says softly. Particular. It's not the first time he's heard that word used to mean something else. He's lived through enough coded language to recognize it by tone alone. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't cause a scene. But inside, something folds over like a letter sealed before it's written. He reaches down, brushes his hand once along Rocco's back, and straightens up. "Let me know," he says. Then he turns. The dog follows, and the door closes with the quiet finality of a loaded chamber. Outside, the rain has slowed, but the air hangs thick with things unsaid. He opens his truck door, helps Rocco in, then sits behind the wheel without starting the engine. Hands resting still like they're waiting for an order that won't come. It's not the rejection that hits hardest. It's the familiarity. He'd prepared every document, followed every rule. Still here, he is parked on the edge of something he can't cross again, and yet Rocco doesn't flinch. The leash sits between them on the center console, black nylon worn smooth. The tag on it glints once under the cabin light. He stares at it without really seeing, at least not yet. He doesn't drive away right away. The wipers squeak once across the windshield, clearing a half-hearted drizzle, as James watches the leasing office through the fogged glass. A car passes behind him, slow and unaware. Rocco lets out a low sigh from the passenger seat, resting his chin on the console like he knows the drill, like he's been here before. And in some way maybe he has every time the world asks James to prove again that he belongs. By the next morning, the rain has passed. James parks in the same spot but doesn't get out. He watches as residents come and go, coffee cups, gym bags, little dogs on retractable leashes chattering like none of this matters. And maybe it doesn't to them. But to James, it's a rerun of a play where his part never changes. At 9:02 a.m., the same receptionist appears behind the front desk. No nod, no wave. She just settles in, opens her laptop, and pretends she doesn't see the truck parked in the corner. He gives it 10 minutes before stepping out. Today, he wears his VA cap, an old one with a fading eagle stitched into the front. Not to show off, just to set the tone. He enters quietly, dog beside him, and places the paperwork again on the counter. Any updates? She stiffens her fingers, pausing mid-keystroke. The manager isn't in yet. "I can wait," James replies. Rocco sits with practiced calm. The receptionist opens her mouth like she's about to say something, then closes it again. James steps back, folding his arms. There's a difference between being patient and being passive. He learned that somewhere in Helmand Province, when silence was not the absence of action, but the waiting before it. 15 minutes later, the manager arrives. His collar is sharper today, his tone flatter. "Mr. Mitchell, I understand you're back. Unfortunately, there's no change to our position." James doesn't reply right away. He lets the words settle. "Then, what exactly is your position?" "That the law doesn't apply here." The manager shifts his weight. "No. Our position is that we are reviewing your request based on resident comfort and safety. There's nothing unsafe about this dog." James says, voice tight. "He's better trained than half the people I served with, including me some days. I'm not questioning your service." The man replies. "Sure you are," James says softly, "just not in words." It's a small line, not loud, but it makes the manager blink. And that's something. "You can escalate this to corporate if you feel I've done that," James cuts in. "I'm waiting on their response." In the meantime, I'd like access to the apartment I've already paid for." The manager's jaw clenches, but he doesn't answer. Instead, he gestures to the receptionist. "Make a note. He'll be waiting." With that, he disappears into the back. Later that afternoon, a security guard circles the parking lot. He's new young, maybe early 20s, wearing his vest too proudly, and his boots too clean. He sees James walking Rocco on the sidewalk near the edge of the property. Doesn't say anything at first, but curiosity gets the better of him. "Hey, sir, you moving in?" James glances over. Trying to. The guard eyes the dog. He's military, right? Looks like it. James doesn't answer, just continues walking. Then the guard catches a glint from the leash tag and squints. Wait, is that? He steps closer. The tag is blackened metal square etched deep with 2 words and a number. It's not a manufacturer's label. It's a battlefield marker. Kilo 3. Fallujah, who were 5. The silence changes. The guard looks at James differently now, not just as a man with a dog, but as something heavier. "My uncle was there," the guard says quietly. James doesn't stop, but something in his shoulders eases. Back at the office, that same guard walks in around dusk. He's not supposed to be in the leasing suite, but he ducks in while the receptionist prints a form. "Hey," he says low. "The guy outside, Mitchell." She looks up, bored. "What about him? You seen the tag on that leash?" She raises an eyebrow. "No. Why?" The guard hesitates, then shrugs. "You should." And then he leaves. Upstairs, behind a cracked window, a woman in her late 60s watches it all. She's seen the dog from her balcony, noted the way it walks beside the man, not dragging, not distracted. Purposeful. Like it knows the route by heart. Her husband passed last year. Vietnam, 1968. She remembers how he flinched when people asked dumb questions. How hard it was to get housing when they had their German Shepherd even back then. Now, she watches the man with the cap walk across the lot rain, starting again in a hush. She doesn't wave, but the next morning, she leaves a note on the leasing office door. It reads, "You let the yappers in, 4B bark all night." That dog outside doesn't make a sound. Maybe think about that. They don't sign it. They don't need to. The paper walls begin to tremble, not from yelling or demands, but from the quiet accumulation of what people see and don't say. And eventually, that silence starts to shift something. Not policy, but people. The next morning, James doesn't come into the office. He's tired of repeating himself to people who already made up their minds. Instead, he walks Rocco through the outer paths of the complex edges, where the landscapers haven't trimmed too neat, where birds still claim corners of chain-link fence. A man can only knock so long before he starts asking why he's even knocking. They pass the maintenance shed, and one of the workers, a stocky guy with a back brace and kind eyes, gives a small nod. "Beautiful dog," he says. James just tips his cap. Smart, too. The man watches the leash drag slightly between them, notices the tag and squints. "Wait." Fallujah James hesitates. "Yeah. My cousin, the man says, tapping his chest. Didn't make it out. Kilo Company. He ever mention a Johnny Perez?" James closes his eyes for half a second, then opens them. "Yeah," he says softly. "We shared a convoy." Good man. They stand there for a beat. 2 strangers linked by a name carved on a wall somewhere. The maintenance guy doesn't ask any more questions. Just reaches into the shed and pulls out a cold bottle of water, hands it over. "You're good in my book," he says. "Dog, too." Later that day, the assistant manager, someone James hasn't yet met, comes outside with a clipboard. She doesn't wave him down, doesn't ask for more documents, just stands near the mailbox column and pretends to read. Rocco notices first. His ears turn slightly. James slows his pace. She glances up, then back to the page. Just wanted to let you know we're forwarding your case to legal. James raises an eyebrow. Legal? It's standard, she says quickly, like she's rehearsed it. With service animals, once there's a complaint. There was a complaint. She blinks. Well, not exactly. Just feedback. James tilts his head. From who she doesn't answer. Just looks back at the paper. Legal will review and advise next steps. He watches her go, then looks down at Rocco, who hasn't moved. The leash tag glints again in the sunlight. That tiny plate has been scratched and dulled and cleaned more times than James can count. It's not decorative. It's not even for him. It's for people who ask, for people who forget, and sometimes for people who remember. At 3:18 p.m., while James is sitting in his truck returning calls from the VA about unrelated paperwork, there's a knock on the driver's side window. It's the security guard again. Hey, he says, you got a second? James rolls the window halfway. The kid looks nervous, now holding something behind his back. Then he hands it over a copy of a folded news article, printed in black and white from an office printer. The headline reads, Dog Saves Squad, after IED blast in Fallujah. The photo shows a younger James covered in sand crouched beside Rocco, who looks exactly the same because time doesn't change a dog the same way. I looked you up, the guard says. Hope that's not weird. James glances at the article, then back at the kid. A little, he says deadpan, but there's no edge to it. The guard chuckles. Well, I just thought people should know. James folds the paper once and sets it on the dash. They won't care. Some will, the guard says, then nods and walks off. That evening, a different kind of shift happens. 2 women are walking their poodles when one of them notices Rocco from across the lot. Oh, that's the dog they won't let in, one whispers, just loud enough. James hears it. So does the woman from upstairs, the Vietnam widow who's also out gathering her mail. She turns slowly, voice soft but precise. That dog saved more lives than any of us ever will. The poodle lady blinks. Oh, I didn't know. You didn't ask, the older woman replies, then walks away, key still in hand. James doesn't say a word, but the corner of his mouth lifts just barely. Later, back in the truck, he adjusts Rocco's collar and finally, for the first time since arriving, flips the leash tag over. The other side isn't blank. It has 3 short lines etched in smaller text. Do not separate service animal. PTSD owner, SGT. James Mitchell, USMC. Underneath that, a 4th line added years later by someone who knew him too well. He's not a dog. He's my proof. He remembers the day it was added. His wife had paid to get it re-engraved after an incident at a grocery store, when some teenager thought he was faking it because he didn't limp or twitch. She had insisted, let people read it. Let them know. She always saw what he couldn't say. Now she's gone. But the tag stayed. The next morning is crisp sky, cloudless, the kind of silence that feels earned. James is walking Rocco again, same loop, same quiet routine. But this time he's noticed. More heads turn not with judgment but with curiosity. Near the mailboxes, a young mother crouches beside her toddler, pointing toward Rocco. That's a service dog, she whispers. You see his vest? The boy nods wide-eyed. Is he a hero? James catches that. Doesn't interrupt. just keeps walking the leash light in his grip, the rhythm of steps, familiar anchoring. He doesn't need thanks. But sometimes a simple truth whispered to a kid is enough to soften a wall. Inside the leasing office, the manager is scrolling through emails distracted. He's seen the comments mounting nothing direct, but they're there. A note left anonymously in the rent box. A forwarded email from an HOA board member. Even a short voicemail let the man in. Still, he waits. Maybe it'll blow over. Then the corporate email hits. Please clarify why Mr. Mitchell's approved lease was delayed due to a service animal, despite ADA compliance and prior documentation. Any further delay may result in legal review. No signature. Just a generic return address. But it's enough. He exhales, leans back in his chair. The weight of the moment presses in. Not just because corporate is watching, but because he knows he was wrong. He knows, and he can't say it. Not out loud. An hour later, James receives a call. Mr. Mitchell, this is the leasing office. We're ready for you to pick up your keys. Everything's in order. He doesn't react right away. Just listens. Then that, all a pause. Yes, sir. Welcome to the community. He hangs up without a thank you. Not out of spite. Just tired. Later, as he climbs the stairs to the second-floor unit, Rocco beside him, the quiet feels different. Not hostile. Just waiting. Like something unfinished has finally moved. The door opens easily. Inside, the apartment is clean, sparse, neutral paint and fresh carpet. The kind of blank canvas he's seen 100 times in base housing. Hotels, rental places after deployment. But here he pauses. He walks the space slowly, letting Rocco sniff each corner, each room. The dog trots once in a wide circle, then sits near the balcony door tail, tapping once. Approved. James lowers himself onto the couch, still wrapped in plastic. Unpacks a small frame, his wife's photo, and sets it on the windowsill. Outside, the complex hums with the distant rhythm of daily life. A leaf blower, kids on scooters, a door slamming 2 floors down. But up here, it's still. That night, someone knocks gently on the door. James opens it to find the woman from upstairs, the Vietnam widow. She holds a plate with foil. Meatloaf, she says, was his favorite. Thought maybe you and the dog could use something warm. He accepts it with a quiet, "Thank you." Before she turns, she adds, "You ever need anything? I'm up there. Apartment 209. Then she leaves. Rocco pads into the kitchen alert, but calm. James unwraps the foil, the scent hitting him, in a way that startles. It's not the meatloaf, it's the gesture. The next day, the young guard from security stops by during his shift. No clipboard, no uniform posture. Just hands in his pockets, sneakers kicking at the dirt. "Hey," he says. So, I think people know now about the tag. James looks at him. That what changed it. The guard shrugs. Maybe. Or maybe people just needed to remember what a real fight looks like. Then he clears his throat. You know, there's this flagpole out front near the sign. It's been missing a flag for a while. HOA forgot to replace it after a storm. James waits. The kid continues. Thought maybe you'd want to raise the next one. For a moment, James says nothing, then nods once. Bring the rope. That evening, as the sun sets gold across the complex, a small crowd gathers. No announcement. Just quiet presence. Tenants lean on railings, pause in doorways. Rocco sits at attention, front paws aligned. James stands beneath the pole, one hand on the flag folded in triangle form. Slowly, deliberately, he raises it. Stars first, wind catching. and for once no one speaks. Not out of reverence, but out of understanding. James doesn't attend HOA meetings. He never liked rooms where people talk a lot but say very little. But now, walking the complex with Rocco, he's greeted more often. Not warmly, not always, but with a nod, a small gesture, a shift. Sometimes that's all dignity needs space and acknowledgement. He gets mail without it being misplaced. The Amazon deliveries stop accidentally going to the wrong unit. Even the poodle ladies wave now awkwardly but with effort. One of them leaves a bag of treats at his door, with a note that reads, "For the real hero." Hope these are okay for his stomach. He never writes back, but he does let Rocco have one. A week later, there's a tenant event in the common room. Coffee and donuts a welcome for new residents. James doesn't plan to go, but the maintenance guy from the shed catches him near the stairwell. "Come by," he says. "They're doing a little speech. Might mention you." James raises an eyebrow. "Mention me?" The man shrugs. "Just sayin'." Later, at the event, a young leasing agent stands nervously behind a table with paper cups and napkins. The manager is nowhere in sight. Maybe he's conveniently working remote today. But the assistant manager, same one who handed James the legal review line, is present. And this time, when she steps up to the mic, her tone is different. "We'd like to welcome some new residents," she says, glancing toward James, "including someone who reminded us of the deeper meaning behind community service and inclusion. Sergeant James Mitchell and his service dog Rocco." A few people clap, others don't. But James doesn't look for applause. He just gives a polite nod and steps back into the corner with his coffee. Rocco lies down at his feet. Across the room, the security guard raises his cup. James nods back. That night, as the complex settles, someone slips a small envelope under his door. It's unsigned. Inside is a card. Simple. Blank on the front except for a gold-embossed word, "Respect." Inside, one handwritten line, "I didn't know who you were. I do now. No name. No need." He pins it beside his wife's photo. Days turn routine. He makes breakfast at the same time each morning. Rocco has a schedule, and they follow it. James even finds a nearby vet clinic that offers discounts for veterans run by an Army nurse turned veterinarian. But every now and then, someone asks him about the leash tag. Not always directly. Sometimes it's a glance too long a question they can't quite form. He tells them what matters, that the tag isn't about bragging rights. It's about remembering what he came back with and who he didn't. Then, on a Thursday, the manager reappears. James is outside trimming a few hedges around his unit. Not required, but it gives his hands something to do. The manager approaches cautiously. "Mr. Mitchell." James doesn't stop. "Manager, I wanted to let you know that we've updated our onboarding process. All new staff will receive ADA compliance training." James straightens gloves in hand. So, yes. "And I wanted to say thank you for your patience." There's a pause. No handshake offered, no formal apology, just that. James lets it hang in the air, then nods once. "Good. Others'll need it more than me." The manager walks off. Rocco doesn't bark, doesn't move. But his eyes track the man until he disappears behind the gate. That night, the flag still flutters gently outside, steady in the breeze. James watches it from the balcony, coffee cooling in his hand, Rocco curled up beside him. Below, the community goes on quiet, unaware, or maybe just respectful, in a way they never learned how to be before. He doesn't think of the office anymore. Not the desk, not the silence, not even the initial insult. What sticks is the shift, not loud, but lasting. The apartment never said sorry. No formal statement, no polished email, no moment of public atonement framed in community buzzwords. But sometimes dignity isn't restored with banners or speeches. Sometimes it returns quietly. One door held open. One leash no longer questioned one neighbor, who finally sees the whole man standing beside the dog. James never asked to be seen. Not like that. He came with papers, not stories. With a tag, not a resume. But in a world that often turns its face away from the scars, it doesn't understand just standing firm is its own kind of defiance. He didn't win a battle here. He reminded people one had already been fought. And in that small pocket of America, between brick walls and mailboxes, a few folks started choosing to remember instead of overlook. That's all he ever wanted. Not praise, not pity, just clarity. Truth in the place of convenience. On his walks now, more than a few footsteps fall into rhythm with his. A neighbor, a child, a dog that wants to meet Rocco and learns the word respect for the first time. There's no plaque, no announcement, no fanfare. Just a flag raised by a man who's still learning what it means to come home, and a dog who never once left his side.